Seems to be the practice is that we start off with a few people and people start meandering in, so we'll have to deal with that and accept that. What's really I find interesting is that I never saw the previous presentation before it was given, but it's almost like mine was custom made to follow his. Because as you're doing everything to delegate, communication is a very big part of it. And I hope that this presentation on communication will help each and every one of you. It's designed not only to work in a sales environment, but in a management environment, in a parental environment, in a teacher environment. So whatever walk of life that you're in, you'll find that this can help you. The first slide is something that I picked up and I saw, and I thought it's very prudent to start off this presentation with this slide. Many people feel, okay, I'm going to go to a presentation, I'm going to go to a workshop, I'm going to listen to what the presenter has to say, and then all my problems will be fixed. I don't have to do anything else. I can just walk in and absorb it. And the truth is that we're going to be talking about behavioral styles, but people typically look for something that doesn't require them to do anything. And that's not going to work. You have to be ready to put in the effort and put in the work, and then you'll be able to reap the benefits of the results. So what I need is a behavioral style that doesn't require my participation. That gentleman is exactly the kind of person you don't want to be. He looks rather schlumpy. He's not going to make it through the day without getting depressed about something. So therefore, let's make sure that we get involved with what we're doing. So communicating effectively with anybody is what we titled this, and it's actually a workshop that's designed to analyze how you're going to communicate in each different situation that you may find yourself in. Because in reality, nothing works all the time for everybody. Everybody has specifically different things about them, and even though we're going to try to define people's behavioral styles, I'm sorry if I'm in your way, I'm just wired, so if you want to adjust for that. But we're going to try to define people's behavioral styles into 4 different categories, and you will find that not everybody is just in that category, but there's a mix. They have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, it's a chunk, okay? And what the key is to try to define what type of personality traits are being exhibited by the person that you're communicating with, and how do you therefore address them. I will tell you that from personal experience and a little bit about myself, I've been involved in sales. Harry Schoenfeld, how are you? I've been involved in sales for a very long time, as Harry can tell you. And one of the things that used to happen to me for many years until I saw this actual presentation later in my career, I would bump into the type of person that intimidated me, and I would just run and not walk the other way. I would decide I'm not going to sell to that person because he intimidated me. I wasn't going to be successful. Why should I fight it? Let me not waste my time. Let me move on to somebody else who appreciates who I am and what I am. And I then saw this presentation, and I said, wow, this is a game changer. So therefore, I incorporated it into my style. I decided to start offering it as part of a series of workshops that I do on sales, because I really feel it's an effective means and an effective tool in sales. And it has changed things. There is now nobody that I'm intimidated by. That doesn't mean I'm successful 100% of the time, but there's nobody that I'm intimidated by that I will not sit down and make a sales presentation successfully to them, catering to their behavioral style, and therefore not intimidating them either. So I'm not going to be intimidated, and they're going to feel comfortable. So let's now talk a little bit about it. First of all, many people will make the mistake and say, oh, this guy is this type of personality, this guy's that type of personality. If I could change his personality, or if I could change my personality. So unfortunately, the truth is, you cannot change a personality. It's something the Rebbeinu Shalom gave you, and that's the way that you are. You can learn to adjust, you can learn to live with, you can learn how to navigate around, but you cannot change your personality. But what many people mistake as a personality is something that we call a behavioral style. There's a certain way a person will act or come across. It may not actually be in his gestalt, it may not be his personality, but it's a behavioral style that he has, and that's what we're going to focus on and how to deal with that. Okay. There are 4 different types of behavioral styles. Now, as I mentioned, a behavioral personality is not something that we can change. Is that clear, by the way? Does it need any focusing? Okay. There are 4 types of behavioral styles that we want to address that we really feel encompasses everything about anybody that you're going to speak to. We have the analyzer, the empathizer, the performer, and the commander. It's interesting, this workshop in its original form is about 3 times as long as we're going to make it, because the first section of this workshop is where a questionnaire of about 50 questions is given out to each participant, and everybody fills them out. There's no right or wrong answers. But this will help, by calculating the scores and going through afterwards, determine which one of these personality traits best describes each of you individually so you can appreciate it. There's a lot of role playing. In this type of a venue, we have to curtail it short, so I'm sorry that we're not going to go through that. But we're going to discuss in detail each of these personality traits or each of these behavioral styles and how to approach them and how to deal with them and what their limitations are. So the analyzer, as we're going to see in upcoming slides, is somebody who obviously analyzes. He lives in the world of numbers and paper and statistical studies, and that's how you try to focus your conversation to him. I used to run away from analyzers because I'm a personality that I like dealing with people, and I'm a people person, and that's what I believe in, and that's how my makeup is like that. And an analyzer wants to sit and study logistics and statistics and numbers and everything like that, and we just don't see eye to eye. So therefore, I would just go the other way because I would find myself not being successful with those type of people. But once I understood how to approach the analyzer and come to his world and make him feel comfortable and supply him with statistics that he so desperately desired and gave him information and studies and all kinds of things that we were talking about, he then was a much more comfortable place and was able to speak and listen, be more receptive to what I had to sell. The empathizer is actually, now those who know me, by the way, I'm going to skip for a second, might have thought that I was a performer because I like getting up and doing things like this. But the performer actually is it shows something else. When I took this test, it turns out I was more of an empathizer. And an empathizer, we're going to go through a lot of the specifics about what makes a person an empathizer and what the positives and negatives is not really the right word, but what the easier and more difficult challenges in dealing with an empathizer can be. Same thing with a performer. A performer likes to control the situation using humor and showing off. He has to get the last word in, and we're going to go through a bunch of things, scenarios like that and how to deal with that. Then we have my least favorite out of all of them is the commander. He's typically the boss type person who has to exude the fact that he is in charge and you can't tell him anything he doesn't already know. He's the commander. And I used to run away from those guys too because I'm not here to fight. I want to have a good time and make a living while I'm doing it. So if he's not interested in that, then I wasn't interested in him. But again, when I learned how to adjust my presentation to deal with the commander personality traits and behavioral styles, it became a much different situation. So let's move on for a second. And this is an interesting thing. Again, I will give you my email address. I don't have cards prepared. I'm not that official guy because I do this more as a, if you will, hobby, chesed, whatever you want to call it. I have a real job and I'm happy in that, and I have 3 different things that I'm actually involved in. Just briefly so you understand, I work for Maimonides Hospital. In that capacity, I basically sell the hospital to doctors and making sure that doctors are very comfortable referring patients to the hospital and whatever it takes. So it's a very consuming job, but I like getting involved in things that I enjoy doing. The other thing is, some of you may know me as a musician. You see me at weddings and playing, and I'm a keyboard player and a band leader in the wedding industry, and I enjoy doing that, and that's my fun. And then we also, as everybody else, probably more than half the people in this venue today, have a little Amazon business on the side. So everybody gets involved and has some fun going on. So I don't look to make consulting like a primary Parnassah myself, but what I do is on opportunities like this, I enjoy coming down, meeting and networking with people and seeing people I know and sharing some of the experiences and things that I've learned, and if it can help everybody else, then it's a great thing. So if we take a look at this, when I give you my email address, by the way, if you send me an email that you'd like a copy of the presentation or any specific slide, I will send it to you, not a problem. Okay, this gives you, in a diagram, a little bit of an advance of what we're going to be going through in the next few slides. Don't get frightened by looking at the complexity of it, but in each of these behavioral styles, there are things you need to watch out for, there are things that work, and there are things that you need to tread lightly because it can go either way. And that's represented by the green, the yellow, and the red, as in a traffic light. So therefore, the green areas are obviously the strength of each behavioral style. The yellow are caution, and the red areas are the kinds that you want to be very careful and stay away from. But let's, instead of looking at the picture of it, let's go through them a little bit more in depth. We mentioned the analyzer needs information. He thrives on this. This is what he lives for. He needs detailed information. He may bore you with all the details. He may tell you statistically about everything he's done or his project has done until now. He's not persuaded by emotion. If you come across in a good sense of a good frame of mind or an upset frame of mind or anything, it doesn't matter to him. He's all about black and white, fit in the box, data on paper. He may not be so comfortable in social situations. He's afraid of making a mistake, and many times when he speaks, he's going to go, I think, ... or I presume ... He's non-committal because he's afraid there might not be data to back him up on it. So watch for the signs on this person also. He comes in very Masudar. He's organized, he's prepared, he has proper post-its all over the place indicating where he's got to go. It looks great. This is not a negative, by the way. It's very good if a person is like this. It's just the way that he is. But if you know about it, we're going to talk about how to deal with that type of a person. So that's your analyzer. The empathizer, okay, is somebody who it turns out he needs approval. Okay, he loves to present and have people give him compliments on what he's doing. He's friendly, he's very sensitive to relationships. He may be indecisive. He may not be ready if this is the person you're trying to sell to. He may say, well, I have to talk to my boss, I have to talk to my manager, I have to talk to my wife, I have to talk to this. He may want to include other people because he doesn't want to be the guy on the hook, because if he makes a mistake, people are going to be upset at him. So therefore, he may be indecisive. He is very service-oriented. Now, if he's on the giving end, that means he's going to service the heck out of you and make you happy. If he's on the receiving end and he's an empathizer and you're speaking to him, he's going to expect to be serviced up the yin-yang. Mr. Malinsky, you can attest to that fact. I, as a client of yours, expected high level of service, correct? That was me, and he gave it to me, so I always appreciated that. He fears rejection. Okay, an empathizer does not like to be rejected. He works very hard to be accepted by whoever he's speaking to. And if you notice, I said before, I turned out to be more of an empathizer when I scored on the test. And that's why I would run away from some of those other clients. I wouldn't bother going because I didn't want to be rejected. Why do I have to deal with that? There's enough other people that I'd be happy with. Why bother? The truth is I was walking away from opportunity. So really, I wasn't doing myself a favor. What I needed to do and what I eventually learned how to do is how to deal with it. By the way, this works great with dealing with your spouses, with your kids, with if you're a teacher, with your students, with your if you're an employer, with your employees. I gave this same workshop in a health clinic to the management, from the doctors on down to the receptionists and to the maintenance cleaning people. It was about 45 people. And it was incredible how the level of cooperation between all these people improved because each one learned how to deal with the other one better. One of the most important things to remember about this is that when you find an empathizer or any one of the styles who doesn't get along with another style and therefore starts thinking that there's going to be friction or everything, the key thing to remember is it's not personal. That's the way he is. So if you remember it's not personal and you just adjust yourself accordingly, you will be much happier and, more importantly, much more successful. Going down the list, the empathizer's customer may agree to purchase and then change their mind. This happens frequently. Sounds like he's ready to do it, and it comes to signing on the bottom line, and all of a sudden, I'm not sure, I feel this may be a mistake, or I feel I need to check this out more, I gotta make sure my boss on top of me is not gonna be upset, or my wife, or anything like that. So you wanna watch out for those expressions that he may say is, I feel this, or I feel that, because that's what the empathizer is all about, feeling, okay? Watch for friendliness, smiling comfortably, and the open body language. I don't know if any of you picked it up on myself, but I am doing that all the time. That's the way I present. I use body language, and it shows to people that I am a friendly person, and I like to be accepted by the people I'm presenting to. Okay, moving on, that's the empathizer, the performer. The performer needs attention. He's very outgoing, he's energetic, he's extroverted, okay? He is also an impulse buyer. He'll see something and he'll talk it into himself why this was something he most definitely had to have. Now, when you're selling to somebody like that, I'm not telling you to mislead somebody, but if that's the type of person that person is, do not waste your time in bringing statistics into your presentation. He's not interested in that. He's all about the excitement and the hype of impulse buying. So therefore, work with these strengths that he has and that you're going to corral into working with him. He laughs loudly and boisterously, wants to have fun, doesn't listen very well. The attention span is not there. You have to make your point very quickly and very succinctly. He fears not being taken seriously, and therefore he uses expressions like, I see, or I see that you are acting like this, or I see that you are presenting this. And therefore, once he exhibits these things, you have to realize that you need to make your point very quickly with him and get to the point, get to the bottom line right away. He's an impulse buyer. He'll decide, this product, this machine, this service that I'm selling, whatever it is, bottom line, this is what it's going to cost you. This is what it's going to do for you. I think it's something that could be helpful for your business. When would you like to have delivery? This is the kind of presentation that works best for a performer. He's neat and fussy about his appearance, and he also has a lot of mood swings. He can go from smiling at you to yelling about somebody who screwed him, 2 weeks ago in a matter of a second, because he needs the attention. He has to feel like he's grabbing your attention all the time. So that's the performer. The commander needs control. This is the guy who is very bossy. He can easily get into an argument. He's very confrontational. You may want to coach him or you may want to advise him, and he's not going to be very open to it at all. He shows disdain for you, your product, or your service. It's like one guy once said it to me. He goes, let me explain something to you. You're coming in here to present something to me. You are a necessary evil. I need this thing, but you are evil because you're causing me to spend money. And that's how now I had to look at this guy as he views me as a necessary evil. The challenge for me to do that, to turn that around for him, was to be able to show him that I am not a necessary evil, but I can actually help make him money. Now, notice I said make him money. I didn't per se say save him money, because a commander doesn't perceive the saving of money as something that you did for him. He feels he's entitled to that. But if you can translate it to him that by my providing this service to you, you now have extra money in the bank. I made you money that you didn't have before. Now you're an asset. Now you're bringing in revenue. You're not saving money, you're making him money. So now you've done something to him. So now it changes the disdain that he may have for your service or your product into an appreciative form. That's a very key point to keep in mind. The commander, by the way, fears change. You know, there's a very famous story that was used in business psychology called The Mouse and the Cheese. Is anybody familiar with it? Who moved my cheese? Okay, so some of you are familiar with it. So very briefly, I'll tell you what it's about, because it's not a whole long story, but there have been books written about this, videos done about this, studies done about this, and it's an incredible thing. But if you think about this, it really touches up about how some people can be. Okay, so you have this mouse who every day would come out at about the same time of day because he was hungry, and there would be a piece of cheese that the people in the house left out, and the mouse would sit down and have a meal. And he was joined by his friend, the other mouse, who lived in another part of the house, and they would meet for lunch every day in the house having the cheese. Okay? Well, as you can imagine, one day the owners of the house got tired of having this mouse problem. Right? So they took away the cheese. Now that doesn't mean they stopped eating cheese, but probably one of the kids now left it someplace else. So what happened is the next day, the two mice come out and they want to meet, and there's no cheese there. Okay? So they're getting hungry. One of them says, I'm going to go look and see where else there might be cheese. The other one says, listen, every single day I've been here, there's been cheese here. I'm not budging away from here because this is a known fact. The cheese is going to be here, so I'm going to stay here. And went past day one. The other mouse who went around looking found the other source for cheese, and he lived happily ever after. This mouse every day came back and was going hungrier and hungrier and finally died because he couldn't deal with the fact that somebody moved his cheese. Now think about it for yourself. If you're used to something being a certain way and all of a sudden it changes, your world feels like it's changing, and what am I going to do about that, and how am I going to deal with it? There are many people, whether it's an age-related thing or a personality thing or a behavioral style thing, that fear change. Some people love change, but a lot of people fear change. And therefore, if you know about that, and your product or service that you're now coming in to present is going to affect a change in this place of business for this performer, this commander type personality trait, you have to be sensitive to the fact and try to lessen the blow, so to speak, of the change that it might make and turn the change into positive, not just be change. But keep in mind, this behavioral style of the commander fears change tremendously. Listen for phrases that he might say is, you can't this, or you can't that, you can't impress me, you can't change, you can't do this. He's very definitive, he's the commander. And he will constantly be shaking his head no, like, you're not really doing anything for me. Okay, so we've gone through these four things. Now let's get a little bit deeper into it. I hope, by the way, I didn't lose anybody, if everybody is with me and holds through to it. It turns out with these four different styles that exist, some of them work well together and some of them don't. Okay? Take a look at the slide. The commander happens to work well with the performer because the performer knows how to deal with the commander knows how to deal with the performer. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth. The analyzer does also work well with the empathizer because the empathizer understands how to deal with the analyzer and can make that happen. What's interesting is the up and down also works together. The commander and the analyzer work great together. The commander starts barking orders, the analyzer says, here's your data, and everybody is Shalom Al Yisrael. The performer and the empathizer do well together because he likes to put on the show and he likes to listen to the show, so everything is all good. So if you have those kinds of combinations going on, you have a good chance of success. Those things work out. What happens when you have... I'm going to come back to that slide. What happens when you have the commander trying to work with the empathizer or the analyzer trying to work with the performer? That's when you run into trouble. So those are the ones that you have to be careful about. Those are the ones I used to run away from. Remember, I'm more of the empathizer, okay? If I met up with a commander, I wasn't so happy. That was my biggest fear. When this guy bossed me around, I said, life's too short for this. Okay, so let's back up a slide for a second. See if I know how to do this. Did I do that right? No, hold on one second. We're gonna go previous, and we're gonna go previous, and we're gonna go previous. Just a real quick, funny story. The first time I had to do a PowerPoint presentation, my youngest son, who's now 15, but was then about 8.5, showed me how to do it. So that's how I became so proficient. When we look about the commander and the performer together, the commanders enjoy being around performers. The performer's self-confidence doesn't allow the commander's need for control bother them. So therefore, they work very well together. The empathizer and performer work well together because the empathizer will listen to the performer and give him compliments. The performer is living for that. The empathizer doesn't get upset when the performer doesn't ask about them. He's totally concentrated on making the other guy happy. So like everybody is really happy in that case. The analyzer and the empathizer will also work well together. They will study the information and feel good about it. Okay, so those things work well together. The commander and the analyzer, as we mentioned before, the commander enjoys it because he demands the information, the analyzer has it to give to him, everybody's all happy. Am I blocking, can you see okay? Okay. So everybody's working out fine in this case. But now what happens when we get into that situation that we talked about? The commander and the empathizer. The commander can easily intimidate the empathizer and may not even realize they are doing it just by the way they are behaving. Empathizers need to be a little bit more firm around the commander and not take the commander's need for control personally. These two sentences may not sound like anything so wow, but these two sentences changed my sales approach in this type of scenario incredibly. These two sentences made it for me. Don't take it personally. It's not against you. That's the way that it is. If you can get past that and get used to getting past that, then it doesn't matter anymore. Then you just need to cater to the person that you're dealing with on their level. Okay, so it's not personally. You can be firm. Don't be afraid to be firm around the commander because that's the way he is. He appreciates the firmness that you're exhibiting. And then we have the performer and the analyzer. The performer's animated style and his boisterous personality can come across as being very boorish to the analyzer. Remember, the analyzer is all about black and white data. It goes in a box. He's not into the sizzle. He's into the steak. Okay, is everybody familiar with that? Yes? Oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, oh, thank you. Okay, so everybody's familiar with that thing, sell the sizzle, the steak, etc. It's great if you have both things to sell. If you have a great product, which is a good steak, but you sell to the sizzle to the right person, that's what makes the sale exciting. The analyzer is not interested in sizzle. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do it for him. He's straight, black and white, fit in the box. So the analyzer's attention to detail and thirst for knowledge can test the performer's patience. Because remember, one of the things we said about the performer, he doesn't have a lot of patience. His attention span is very short. So therefore, that can be a problem when those two get together. So the analyzer, if he's the one who's presenting, needs to present quickly and give short, and if possible, a funny response. It's not easy for an analyzer to do that, but it's something that you can learn how to do. Okay, moving on. Now, we talked about contradictory styles. Remember, we had the cross and the diagonals. What also does not work well together is if you have a commander going up against the commander. The two of them are fighting for control. It's a very difficult situation. I can't tell you I personally lived through it because I'm not a commander. But when you have that type of a situation where somebody is presenting as a commander to a commander, you know, if I would be in the room, I would just duck because you never know what you're going to get hit by. But it's something to pay attention to. When you have two performers, they don't listen well. Remember, that's one of the key things about a performer. It's all about him. He's got to get the last line in. Performer never lets you get the last word. He's always got to get the last word. You ever have that where you say something and the person ends up by saying something, they got to get the last word? Or even when you're texting or sending an email, they got to get the last word in. I'm not talking about thank you or something like that. That's Menschlichkeit. But they got to get the last word in. That's indicative of something. You pick up on those things and it gives you a little bit of an insight what type of person you're dealing with. So therefore, if they don't listen well and they're trying to one-up each other, because he's always got to you'll tell him a story, he'll tell you a better story. You'll tell him about a trip you took, he took a better trip. I watch this all the time and I laugh inside. Because what really is happening in these commanders' minds when they have to up, the performers' minds rather, when they have to one up each other, they're lacking in a self-confidence. So they're building their own self-confidence by doing this. So you may tell him about a great experience that you had with something, he had a better one. He's got to tell it with you because he has to make himself look good in your eyes. That's the performer. Now that we've got all this information, okay, I've thrown a ton of information at you. I've been giving little tidbits about how to use this information, but bottom line, how do we use this information to help us succeed? There's a workshop that I give, which is called The Science of Selling. We talk about rejection, we talk about objections, and how to analyze objections. And there are predictable and objections, and there are objections that are not always so predictable. Okay, so if something's not predictable, obviously we can't address it. When we expect something, we have to prepare ourselves for sale. This is really like going into that aspect of a sales workshop. But you have to know your product or service that well that you can anticipate, based on your knowledge of the person that you're presenting to, what may some of his objections be and how am I going to address them within the style of the type of person that he is or the behavioral personalities that he's exhibiting. So therefore, if you prepare for that in advance, you'll minimize how much of that will happen. Each behavioral style tends to have its own type of motivation of objection. You can handle habit level responses quickly and efficiently by being prepared. If you've already know this person or you've made a presentation to this person before, so you know what type of person is, you know what type of data he's looking for, when he throws those curveballs at you and you are prepared, you can then respond to him in the manner that he likes to be responded to with the proper information so that you can bring yourself that much closer to closing the sale. Does everybody understand the predictable objections concept? It's very important. I will tell you, I've done a lot of years of sales and I love sales, okay? In the early onset of my career, I just walked in, it's like throwing yourself into a swimming pool and sink or swim. If you can think fast on your feet, a lot of times that can work for you. But if you're prepared when you're going in, it's so much better. You sweat so much less and you're so much more successful. So we talked about the 4 behavioral traits. How do we deal with the objections from each one of these guys? So let's talk about overcoming the commander's objections. The commanders use objections to resist change. The first thing you have to remember on a commander is don't argue or try to threaten the commander. Don't say something like, if you don't purchase this today, tomorrow it's going to be more expensive. That's the worst thing you can say to a commander. They don't like to be threatened because he's a commander. He'll say, good, and he'll cut off his nose to spite his face, get out of my office, and he'll pay more to somebody else who is not going to threaten him. There is a time and a place where, even if it's true, by the way, and I'm not talking about lying, I'm talking about, really, today's the last day of this price, tomorrow there's a price increase, and therefore I implore upon you, make your decision today. If you do that with a commander, you are not getting a sale. Don't allow your feelings to be hooked by the commander intimidation. Again, I can't stress enough, it's not personal. Don't take it personally. And use negative self-communication, okay? By just a quick show of hands, how many people are familiar with what's called a negative self? Okay, so let's talk briefly about the negative self, okay? I gave an example over here where, and I've used this, and when the first time I learned about this, 30-something years ago, I said, nah, you gotta be kidding me. And no, it's true. It really works on especially the commander type personality trait. You walk in, obviously you've had some time to build some type of rapport with this person, and you're talking with him. And I would say something like, you know, they just introduced a piece of equipment. It's probably not for you. I'm curious what you think about it. I'm not here to show it to you because, you know, I think it's for you. But I'm curious as what your reaction would be to it. And I will tell you a very high percentage of the time, they end up purchasing that piece of equipment. Because you're not butting heads with him now. You're not going up against his style. You're not threatening. You're coming across as, it's not for you, but I appreciate your business acumen. I appreciate your advice. I value our relationship. Can you tell me what you think about it? Why wouldn't you buy this thing? I know you're not buying it. Tell me why not, so I can be better prepared when I go to see the next guy, okay? And it works. Get used to it. There are books written on the negative sell. Do a little bit of homework and research, and you will have the time you like. You'll have so much fun with this. I'm telling you, it's great.
It's called takeaway sell.
Right.
It's not for me. I want it.
Right. Because the commander personality is you're taking control away from him when you say this is not for you. What do you mean it's not for me? I'll decide if it's for me or not. Okay? No, I think it is for me, and I'm gonna. Now, again, I am not advocating misleading somebody. If you really feel that something is the right thing for the person, then this is a way of helping them see this. In each of my workshops, I give the following story that happened to me as the clearest example of how this can be true, okay? I spent over 30 years in medical equipment sales. And we concentrated pretty much on equipment that generated revenue for physician offices. Now, one of the things that we sold and we were focused very much on is what they call a power exam table. Now, I'm sure everybody here has been to a doctor's office once in their lives for a well-visit checkup, okay? And you get onto this exam table. In most offices, it's a regular exam table. You'll climb up on a little step, maybe if it's there. You'll turn yourself around, you'll sit down, and okay, and it continues on. But there is what we call the Cadillac of exam tables. For physicians, there is something that starts out as a chair. The patient sits down in the same thing, and with power buttons, the physician can manipulate the patient into any position for any kind of exam that is required. And it brings the patient into a comfortable position for the physician to treat the patient. I'll explain that in a second. So I get a phone call from a customer who has not yet been a customer in our business of ours, and he introduces himself, and he happened to have come from a certain culture, I will tell you, that is not known for their large spending habits. In other words, cheap, okay? Very frugal, okay? And he says, how much is a used exam table? Now let me explain just briefly. A typical exam table at that time, in a doctor's office, is about $1,000. Regular exam table. Today it's about $1,500, okay? A used exam table, okay, would be $700. They had inexpensive exam tables that were wooden H-brace tables with just a platform on top. Those were about brand new $500. And he wanted a used one of those, okay? Now, so you talk about a guy wanting to spend $250. Okay, on an exam table. Not happening, okay? And this is on a phone call. Now, I could have done this one or two ways. I could have said, listen, I'm not really interested. It's not even worth the delivery time or whatever. But I said, can I come down and see you in your office? Okay. He allowed me to come down. He was an analyzer. He wanted data. He was such an analyzer. And I went and I started explaining to him about, oh, by the way, let me just add in, the power table, the fancy Cadillac, is $10,000. Okay, so $1,000 for a regular new exam table, $10,000 for a new power table. Now there were tax incentives for the power exam table, so in essence it would cost them a lot less than $10,000, but at the end of the day he has to write a check for $10,000, okay? So I walk into this doctor's office and I'm talking to him, and I start talking to him about, wouldn't you like to bring the patient up to your height instead of bending down all the time to deal with the patient? I said, you ever look in the hospital, you walk in the hospital, you see the doctors, the older doctors are all walking around bent over like this, good morning, because all the years, I said, let me ask you a question, what kind of car do you drive? Now, I didn't make this stuff up, I was trained how to do this. But I was appealing to him on his level. He says, what do you mean? I drive a Mercedes. Of course, what doctor doesn't drive a Mercedes, right? I said, how much time do you spend in your car a day? A half hour each way. So for 1 hour a day, you're in your Mercedes in the lap of luxury. That's great. It's important. I said, how many hours a day do you spend by the exam table, bent over, uncomfortable? Wouldn't it be much more sensible to the bulk of your time that you're working to be comfortable, and you'll have the tax credits, and I hit him with all this. I walked out with a sale of a $10,000 table. Okay? He wanted a used $250 table. I walked out with a $10,000 sale. It's not because I was so good. I took the tools and utilized them in the proper space, and the stuff actually works. So, you know, I started with him and how I introduced the power table, because I didn't want to get thrown out. You know, here's a guy who wants a $250 table, and I want to talk $10,000 table, right? If I would start with that, I'd be out the door. The guy would have thrown me out right away. I said, listen, you're probably not going to be interested in this because you wanted a used exam table. But you know what? Take a look at this and tell me what about this doesn't work for you, and then maybe I can find something that might work for you better. And we just led him through that. So it does work. The negative sell is something, again, I diverted off the path a little bit because it's a great story. I love that story. But I still speak to the physician today, even though I'm not in that business anymore. But it's a really good, it's a good tool to use, a negative sale. Now, when you're dealing with a performer, how do we overcome a performer's objections? Let's first understand what kind of objections the performers use. Why do they object, performers? They're performers. They're not interested really in getting the proper facts of, you know, the sale that you're doing. But what they want to do is refocus attention onto themselves. Remember, they need the attention. You're now telling him you want the attention because you're presenting your product, but he wants the attention, so he's going to give him objections. What you need to do is compliment him for asking an exceptional question. Keep your responses short and, if possible, funny. Emphasize the image of the business because of your product or service. How successful he may look. Okay, with this doctor, just continuing the story. Doctor, can you imagine your patients coming in and seeing this level of luxury that you're exuding here? The patient can sit down and you're manipulating them into whatever, as opposed to the old style way. It makes you look better. It makes you look like you care for your patients that much more. Right? So you're using that to make sure his image is going to look better. Don't try to impress the performer, because he's going to always one-up you in the way that he wants to impress everybody else. And don't expect the performer to listen well or remember your presentation. It's all about him. It's not about you. So you keep it short, keep it straight to the point, try to keep it funny, and move on, get to sale. The empathizer. The empathizer's indecisiveness is masked with the need to discuss the decision with others. We mentioned this before. He needs this decision with others to make it happen. So what you want to do is make sure that anything that might prompt discussion get taken care of up front. Make sure the financing options are clearly understood and you give it to him in writing. Use words that he appeals to, like feel, comfort, convenience, when you answer an objection. Well, I think that's too expensive. Right, but your comfort and how you examine your patients, isn't that important to you? You're doing that for 8 hours a day? Again, you're using what applies to him, much more so. And he doesn't like to be put on the spot. He humana. That doesn't make him feel comfortable. If you want to get that sale from him, don't put him on the spot. If you're going to ask him a question that you're afraid he's going to look like he doesn't know the answer, give the answer for him. Help him with that. So therefore, you're not putting him on the spot and he doesn't feel threatened. The analyzer, they have this incredible desire and the quest for data. So ask up front, what will be acceptable to you as data that you can trust? When an analyzer brings up an objection or a question, he says, well, what kind of studies do you have to show me that this thing will actually improve productivity? Don't answer his question. Ask the question, what would you consider sufficient data to answer that question? And then let me get that for you. Because if you assume on your own that you're going to get what is going to answer his question, he's going to come back with another question. So ask him what's going to be acceptable, and therefore supply it to him so you don't give him an out. Provide documentation for every claim that you make in your presentation. Don't respond very positive or enthusiastic. They get very suspicious of that. Keep it to the facts. Keep it straight, non-emotional, dry, and adjust this way for your presentation, and you will be successful with an analyzer. And the analyzers, be aware that they may ask more clinical questions than other behavioral styles. They're going to really cut open and peel away the layers of everything that you're going to say to understand it. So the more you're prepared for it, the more successful you can be. That kind of brings us to the end of the PowerPoint presentation on it. But what I wanted to just clarify and make clear is that if you walk away with nothing out of this presentation except for don't take it personal and try to match the style that's being presented to you, then you'll be successful. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
When you walk into, presentation, is it like a fork in the road? Like, okay, I'm gonna look for a few clues to see which one to take. I'm like, oh, and I'm going down this fork, with all the path that appeals to this person.
It's a great question. It's a great question. One of the things that I like to stress, and is really geared for the other presentations that I give, but your most important tool as a sales individual is not your product knowledge, it's not your ability to speak, it's not your ability to present. The most important tool you have are your ears. So when you walk in and you ask questions and you listen to what's being said to you, you shouldn't have to come to that fork in the road, really. You should be able to have been led down which path he wants you to take him to if you're listening to what he says. If he asks the question, I'm going to come right to you. If he asks the question in a specific way, he's laying the groundwork for you. Learn how to listen, and then you'll be able to answer, cater to the question. In a general way, does that answer it? I mean, it's an in-depth question.
In other words, I guess with experience, you have different styles, and certain questions are automatically a certain style. So
Sure.
you learn how to answer certain questions as it caters to that style.
Sure.
Those questions won't come up
Right.
with the other style. So effectively, you don't need to necessarily even choose forks in the road and say, oh, okay, I'm on this tree over here. That's basically what you do.
Well, when you walk in and initially meet somebody, if he's going to be the type of person that's going to be on the phone and says, sit down over there, he's yelling on the phone, he already touched himself up to you about what he is, and therefore you're going to present yourself a certain way. You're going to hear within the first 30 seconds guaranteed what kind of person you're presenting to. Yes?
You said you're going to hear in the first 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, a little louder.
When you say you're going to hear in the first 30 seconds, let's take one step back. What do you do in that 30 seconds? Like, do you have any suggestions to prompt certain conversations, things to talk, things to say, things not to say? Do you talk about women? Do you talk about the family? Do you talk about...
It's a great question. Okay, so it's assuming a few things, but let's start first, going back to what I said to him, just reiterating it again because it's just as important in your scenario. Listen to what's being said, and that will help first. Many times what I do to determine what kind of person I'm dealing with, I start off with something like, if you were in a perfect world and you could design the exact perfect service which I'm presenting or product that I'm presenting for yourself, what would it have? And you listen to his explanation to you or his request from you, and that will tell you what kind of person he is. So, I'm sorry? Absolutely. Oh, well, I'm talking about the niceties. Good morning. Obviously, I'm here for a reason, so I'm assuming we're pissed out. Good morning. How are you this morning? I understand that you're interested in this product. Okay. Let me ask you a question because I want to be able to give you the best product that I can that meets your needs. If you could design the perfect product for this specific need, what would it be? How would it be done? Tell me about what your needs are. So if I hear from you, I'll help you pick the right thing for you. The key thing is to throw it always to them. And again, in the sales seminars, you will hear something called an open question and a closed question. You have to learn when to ask open questions and when to ask closed questions. Just very quickly, a closed question is going to have a yes or a no answer. Would you like it in blue or red? Okay? That's a closed question. Okay? An open question is, well, tell me what you think about ... and allow the person to speak, so therefore you can help formulate your presentation. Any other questions that I had? Yes? I'm sorry, it's very echoey. I'm apologize. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, something that I constantly am thinking about is with opening lines. If you're doing cold calling, for example, and I know that building common ground is very important to build in a feeling of trust.
Right.
How do you have any suggestions on some of those opening lines without sounding fake?
Sure. Sure. What you need to do is take in with your eyes, first of all, and try to assess what kind of person you're dealing with. How's he dressed? Is he dressed conservatively? Is he dressed more aggressively? On the phone, it's very difficult. I should have said in advance, typically my presentations are geared for the face-to-face, because I feel that a face-to-face makes so much more of a difference than on the phone. On the phone, what typically happens if somebody calls me on the phone, I'll just tell you, it's all about price and how quick I can get it, and if it's a small thing. If it's something that requires a major decision, I'm not doing it on the phone. So.
Cold calls or face-to-face?
A cold call face-to-face, so now I take a look and see, is the office very fancily, outfitted, is it not? Is it gaudy? Is it done in style? How's the person dressed? And therefore, I start getting a feeling for the person, and I customize my presentation into that. How does he say good morning? Is he on the phone? Is he rude? Is he interrupting our conversations, accepting calls from everybody else, or is he dedicating himself to me? That's very indicative if he's more of a commander or if he's more of an empathizer. Rude is the commander. That's why you have to be very short, succinct, straight to the point, boom, 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 and cater to him, and don't make him not feel that you're wasting his time. Absolutely. So my email address is shimmy.braun. It's SHIMMY .BRAUN@gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email with any questions. Identify yourself that you saw me at this workshop, and I'll be happy to send you slides or the complete presentation. Thank you very much.
Really well done.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.